Well, this is pretty cool. I just got up here from Sydney last night, and I'll take any opportunity I get to come to Port Macquarie, and I've got a van full of surfboards and Crescent Head's next stop this afternoon, so you don't have to twist my arm much to get me up to this part of the world. But I hear that you guys come from all over the state, so it's a real treat to be here, and I thank the organisers for having me. So we are going to have a good old-fashioned chat about sustainability today. But sustainability is such a big term, it's such a big concept, there's so many facets to it. And so what we are going to be doing today is looking at it through this lens, this microcosm of waste. And the reason I like that so much is because we all have a relationship with waste. We create waste. And when I think about sustainability, when I define sustainability, I look at it in the context of we need to live within our means. As Andrew was saying, our planetary means. We only have one planet, yet we're using too many resources to sustain our ongoing habitation of this planet. But it also comes down to our communities, to our homes, to our schools, to our life. Sustainability is about living within your means. And I look around at the way we are living now, the way we are consuming resources, the way we are obsessed with stuff. So much of it that gets thrown away, and I think this is so clearly unsustainable. And so I'm going to take you on a journey today around why waste is so important, and I really want you to be thinking about what you can do when you go home today, when you go and have lunch today, when you go back to your schools, what can be happening in our community to show that we are serious about sustainability by changing our attitudes towards waste. So my journey starts well and truly before I got into zero waste and plastic pollution. It started out by being people like you guys in the audience. When I was in school, I really enjoyed subjects like geography and the sciences. And little did I know at the time, but I probably had the same leadership qualities that brought you guys here today. But you're probably thinking to yourself, well, am I a leader? I mean, I'm here, but what does it mean to be a leader? And it was really about me recognising my core values and my core abilities. And so I went on to study sustainability at university. I went on to work in the not-for-profit sector. I felt that I had an opportunity to open up a conversation and be a leader around sustainability. But as I'm going to show you with my presentation today, it sort of really focuses well and truly back onto a really, really important part of my life, which is Andrew sort of the introduction. It was about being a surfer. Surfing gave me an incredible connection to something much bigger. I'm sure there's some surfers out there. I'm sure there's people who love some aspect of getting into the natural world and having this very, very special connection. In the ocean, it's the wildlife that you see. It's this meditative experience that you embrace when you go out there and put yourself in this beautiful liquid world. And what happened with surfing was it made me want to protect this thing that I loved so dearly. And as I got better at surfing, I started to travel the world to find and chase these elusive, amazing waves that every surfer wants to explore. And the first place most Australian surfers go is our neighbour to our north, to Indonesia. And it was during these adventures that I saw things that absolutely horrified me. I saw the way the ocean was being treated. I saw the state of the ocean because of human impacts. And it was the trash. It was the trash that was everywhere throughout the landscape, throughout the catchment, in the rivers, in the waterways, and unfortunately, in the ocean. And so I was saying to myself, well, this isn't right. I mean, we grow up here in Australia, you're in the Port region where there's some of the most clean and pristine beaches in the world. But when you go away and you see what other beaches are like, what's happening in other parts of the world, you sort of go, well, this is a really big issue. It's a big issue because the oceans are all interconnected. What happens over there can affect us over here because the oceans are constantly moving. They're this beautiful, dynamic beast that covers 70% of the world's surface. And so I started saying to myself, well, we need to do something. Why aren't we as surfers standing up and saying, this isn't right? Why aren't we banding together to protect our oceans and wildlife? So I was feeling really motivated. I was doing a lot of stuff in a personal context. I was always picking up rubbish when I left the surf. If I ever saw a plastic bag floating beyond the breakers, I'd paddle out, often missing a wave, which is pretty frustrating. You'd lose your spot in the lineup to go and get the plastic and put it up your wetsuit. But I thought, you know what, we actually need to do more. So I had these feelings inside me like I wanted to do something, but I didn't know quite what it was. And then something happened. In 2009, I saw this image. And this image is a testament to the power of a photograph, because this photograph changed my life. This photograph made me reconsider what it meant to be a participant on our planet. The story behind this photograph, and you may have seen it before, is so powerful. We're looking at the dead remains of an albatross, a Laysan albatross that was born on one of the most remote islands on our planet, a place called Midway Atoll. It's about halfway between Hawaii and Japan. So it's this tiny little speck in the middle of the ocean where these birds have been going for millennia to raise their young. There's no humans that live there or habitat. So what we see is an opportunity for a pristine setting. But when it comes time for the adult albatross to go and find food for their babies, they fly over the ocean looking for food. And what do they see? They see our trash. They see our trash, they mistake it for food, and they bring it back and they feed their young. They kill their babies with things like cigarette lighters and bottle caps and toothbrushes and all manner of plastic debris. When I saw that, it absolutely floored me. When I read that story, it knocked me for six. I thought, really, a majestic species like an albatross is dying because of a bottle cap? It just didn't make sense. So I said to myself, well, Tim, this is it. This is that call to action you've been waiting for. And so I said to myself, pick up rubbish when you see it on the ground. If you ever see a bottle cap on the ground, are you going to walk past it? Of course not. I was walking in here today, saw it on the ground. I can't actually walk past these things anymore. Because if I don't pick that up off the pavement, off the beach, off a park, every likelihood is going to be that's going to get blown, washed, rolled into the stormwater system, into our creeks and our rivers, our stormwater system, into the ocean, and maybe one day end up inside the stomach of a bird. So I've got a lot to thank, or perhaps curse, when it comes to this image, because it did change my life. But I tell you what, I'm really happy that it happened. So that was in 2009, and it led to me saying, right, if I can do this small gesture of picking up a few bits of rubbish to help save wildlife and help keep our oceans clean, then can we get more people to do it? So I got together with some colleagues, and that's when we started Take 3. Take 3 pieces of rubbish with you when you leave the beach, when you leave the park, when you leave the waterway. In fact, you can take 3 anywhere, because every river leads to the sea. The ocean is downhill from everywhere. And the thing I love about the Take 3 concept is it's so simple. Everyone can do it, anywhere, anytime, won't cost you money, won't cost you much effort, and you know what? It feels good. And so it's all about collective impact. There's 350 students here today. You guys leave here, you go and do your Take 3 for the sea. What's that, 1,050 pieces of rubbish? Bang, gone, just in one instance. Imagine if we could get 24 million Australians to do it. Imagine if we could get 7 billion people to do it. It's about collective impact. And that to me is a really special thing. The focus at Take 3 is not about saying you should go and take 3 because you have to. I want you to take 3 because you want to. So a lot of our messaging is fun, is engaging. We've just about hit 27,000 followers on our Instagram. We've got over 44,000 social media followers around the world. People are doing it, and they're feeling good about doing it. We really are starting a movement. I'll run you through just some of those ways that people are expressing their willingness to be part of the solution. These are all just images that have come off our Instagram feed. Show us your Take 3 for the sea. You might want to take 3 when you're out there taking your surf photography. If you see the stuff, you can pick it up, you can hold on to it, you can bin it. Very, very simple. Get artistic. People love showing us what they're doing with the debris that they're finding, put it into an artistic context, share it with the world. That action of you guys doing a take 3 and sharing it is essentially you being leaders, you being educators, you being environmentalists, because people that see that in your feed are going to respond and go, oh, wow, this person is responding to this problem and doing something about it. Maybe I will too. Or maybe you're just educating them in the process. Or you can get out there and just say, you know what, I'm sick of it, and go and target like a big bulk item. This was a young boy who saw that video of the straw up the turtle's nose. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. It came around our Facebook feeds a while ago now. It was full on. Some scientists were out studying turtles. They found a turtle. They were like, what's going on here? It had something up its nostril, and it was a painful 9 minutes to watch. I only ever watched it once because I was in tears, but they essentially pulled a straw out of a beautiful turtle's nose. It was full on. So plastic straws, got to go. Hate the things. And we also do a lot of stuff with organised cleanup activities. So it's not just about social media. We have programs going into schools, going into surf clubs, going into all manner of communities to try and motivate people to respond to this problem. So one of the things that we really do a lot of, and I'd love to see you guys take this back to your schools and your communities after today, is we do projects in schools that are all about you as leaders, as younger people, responding to the problem to make your own projects in schools. So Project Green Sea Turtle was a recent one that we did where 24 schools across the Central Coast all participated. So we go in there, we give you the call to action, the education, but it's all up to you to choose what you do in your schools and communities to make a positive difference. And you can see there what we're going to be doing in the masterclass today. Anyone who's coming to the masterclass, is just some brainstorming. If we are going to solve this giant problem of plastic pollution throughout our environment and oceans, well, what are we going to do locally to combat it? And that's a big part of what we're going to do in the masterclass today. And there's a very simple example of what even a 6-year-old can do as a result of learning about the problem. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to create my own method of communicating how I feel about the problem with a simple poster here with animals going, oh, I'm dead, and, you know, pick it up and bin it for the sea. So very, very simple for us to do our own thing to make a difference. Look, I want to go a little bit further into my story now, because Take 3, we started it in 2009, and things are going really well. I'm not saying it's been easy. Sticking your neck out and being a leader doesn't always happen easily or quickly. It's hard. But it's been incredibly rewarding. In 2011, I had such a cool opportunity. I was living in Newcastle at the time, and I'd always heard, since I was interested in this problem of plastic pollution, about a part of the ocean called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. And in 2011, an opportunity came along for me to go and see this garbage patch with my own eyes. So I quit my job, I left Newcastle, I crowdfunded about $20,000, and away I went on this expedition, sailing from Hawaii to Canada. 5,000 kilometres. I'd never done sailing before. It was the first time, but it was really, really cool. So I had a chance to go and see the garbage patch for myself. It started me on a very interesting journey. Suddenly I was going to leave my comfort zone and become this outspoken leader to attract attention, to try and get the support to go out there, and also to make sure that whatever I did was going to be worthwhile. So I started engaging with the media, started hosting events, started to try and get as many people as possible following my journey. And this is the reason I went out there. We spoke about before just then the garbage patch. This little image here shows you these little red blobs in the world's oceans. These are the places in the sea where we're now studying them quite closely because plastic is accumulating in very, very high concentrations in these regions. They're known as gyres. Gyres are basically where ocean currents converge. So if you can imagine like a giant whirlpool, like a big vortex spinning around and around, that's what these gyres do. That's very natural. That's what the oceans do. What's not natural is all the plastic, which is now accumulating there. So we basically left from Hawaii and sailed all the way to Canada to go and study this region. And it was really quite phenomenal. I should have a little video now, hopefully it works, that's going to show us a little bit about these complex currents that move around our planet in our oceans. We'll see how we go. We can leave it there. It's just a great way of us reminding that this planet that we live on, that we know our little local area and we feel comfortable, it's so much bigger. And these ocean currents that move around the world are what's basically dictating our weather, our climate. They're affecting everything related to our food. These currents in the ocean are everything. They sustain life on Earth. But they're also the reason why we've got these garbage patches forming in our ocean. So off I went sailing out to explore this Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and it was a phenomenal experience. And just as I'd hoped, when I came back to Australia with my own personal account of what the Great Pacific Garbage Patch was like, people wanted to hear my story. And so I was like, yes, it worked. Suddenly I was on the media, on Channel 7 News. I was invited to do a TED Talk. So in 2011, I did my first ever big presentation that went out to online audiences all around the world. A phenomenal experience. And suddenly, from that day on, the momentum was well and truly going. I'd done it, I'd seen it with my own eyes, and now it was up to me to start communicating it to attract more and more attention and support. And that really has culminated in, as we heard in my little bio, an amazing achievement, 2014 Sustainability Champion for New South Wales, an award from the government. So that's the then Environment Minister, Rob Stokes. And the journey really just gets weirder and weirder. Certainly the strangest thing I reckon that's happened in my life to date is that I've literally become a poster boy for my university. So I've got billboards and buses with my big hairy head on it, which I'm not entirely happy about. But hey, if it helps to inspire younger people to understand the importance of sustainability and to do something, then I'll take that. But essentially, I'm surprised by that because when I was growing up, no one was really talking about the issue of waste or pollution in the context of sustainability. So the way I like to look at it is, I just saw something that I didn't like, that I thought more people needed to hear about, and I said something. So the question I've really been asking since day one is, where does our plastic go? What are we all doing? What is our role in this giant, enormous problem of plastic pollution? And so that's a question I'm still asking to this day. We are seeing some solutions, but we need to do more. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail around this plastic pollution problem because I think it is one that is so critically important that we address. This problem is getting worse and worse every day, and if we don't do something, our oceans are really well and truly in danger. And as we learnt before, without a healthy ocean, there is no healthy us. So go ocean conservation. So you can see this problem everywhere. You go on a holiday to almost anywhere in the world and you are going to find pollution. Nowhere is immune. I do like to focus a bit on places like Indonesia, A, because it's very close to us, but B, it is one of the worst polluting nations in the world. So here we are on beautiful Kuta Beach in Bali, a place where Australians flock to in massive, massive numbers. But what's happening in this instance is all this debris we see on beautiful Kuta Beach has come from the land. It's come from the catchment where the communities aren't doing a good enough job of managing their waste. Plastic on the ground, plastic waste in the catchment is as good as being plastic in the ocean because when those heavy rains come, when the floods come, it all gets washed out to sea and a little bit gets pushed back up onto the shoreline. That can be seen in detail when you go to places like the Philippines. In examples like this, they've actually got people and communities using waterways as their garbage disposal service. So for us, what do? Well, we put it in our bin. You know, we go to our homes, we often have 3 bins, one for rubbish, one for recycling, maybe one for green waste. So we've got an incredible service that helps to take our waste away. But that bin, that little plastic container in your playground or in your home, it's connected to billions of dollars of infrastructure to make the waste go away. But many small communities don't have that kind of money. So the easiest way to make their waste to go away is to throw it into a waterway, to burn it, or to dump it. So this is ground zero. Developing nations are a major source of pollution. It's worth noting, though, that a lot of these communities, they didn't ask to have all this plastic packaging. Many communities used to use sustainable forms of packaging like banana leaves or newspaper or cardboard, stuff that was biodegradable, not the plastic, which is highly non-biodegradable. And so it's not only a problem in these developing nations, it's a problem in our own backyard. This is Sydney, where I live now. This is the Cooks River. And the infuriating thing about an image like this that I see is that the most pollution that we often find is things like plastic bottles. Now, plastic bottles are a real blight. We're using over 13 billion beverage containers in Australia. And whilst we know that they're recyclable, we're not doing a good job of recycling them. We only recycle about 40%. So that means 60% end up in landfill or end up in our oceans. And so that's infuriating because when we recycle, we give those precious materials a second chance to be something. If we don't recycle them, then all that precious energy, all that precious resources is gone. And it's worth noting that plastic is made from oil at this point in time. So it's a big problem. When I try and get people to understand the scale of this problem, you can definitely look up the textbook definition and read that 8 million tonnes of new plastic waste goes into our oceans every year. Now, that's just a big number. I think we're desensitised to big numbers. So that's why I like this image. This image is 3.8 tonnes, which is the amount that goes in every 15 seconds. Every 15 seconds, that much plastic goes into our oceans. Times it by 4, that's 1 minute's worth. Times that by a full day, a full year, you can certainly start to understand why Houston, we've got a serious problem. And so it's obviously having a massive impact on wildlife. You've probably all seen images and stories. We've all seen Happy Feet with Lovelace the penguin with the six-pack ring around him. That's not just a story, that's a real problem. You can see that when you go out and study these wildlife. Wildlife like sea turtles. Sea turtles are the most majestic creatures. They're basically dinosaurs. They've been around for 100 million years. They've withstood so many challenges, yet they are suffering big time from plastic. There's an example there with a small juvenile green sea turtle that washed up on a beach in Ballina, 317 pieces of plastic in its stomach. We have a real duty to protect these animals. It's whales, it's dolphins, it's fish, it's everything in between. It's really, really quite alarming how many animals are suffering from our plastic. There's a whale with 100 plastic bags in its stomach. 100 plastic bags in one whale in the Mediterranean. I don't know about you guys, but that makes me think twice about using plastic bags. Haven't been using them for about 5 years. Fish with plastic in their stomach. Now, many of us love our seafood, right? And we often think about seafood as being this source of beautiful, abundant, organic, wild protein. But when you start finding out how much plastic is getting into seafood, is getting into the marine food chain, you realise that whole premise is under attack. It's really not that possible to call our wild-caught seafood organic or even potentially fresh and healthy sometimes because plastic is getting in there. Plastic is even being ingested by plankton. So we're doing studies now on microscopic plankton, of which the entire ocean ecosystem is based upon, and they are ingesting these microscopic pieces of plastic. So, as I said before, we have got a problem. It's time we had a conversation around plastic pollution. So here we are again, back in Hawaii, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. When you go and visit some of these beaches in Hawaii, you can see the impact of these accumulation zones. The most heartbreaking reality about the ocean plastic is that it doesn't biodegrade. Plastic is made from oil or natural gas. It's synthesized with a whole range of complex chemicals, so that the material you end up with, nature's never seen it before. Nothing exists in nature that can digest and eat plastic because it's never encountered it before. So what we see is all these broken remnants, tiny, tiny pieces of plastic. And that's what we call microplastic. And when I went out to study the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that's what we found. I'd read about this garbage patch in literature or online in media articles, and they were talking about a supposed island of rubbish. And that wasn't the case at all. When we were out there on the vessel doing our research, it was mostly this small plastic that we found, coupled with things that were definitely recognisable. Toothbrushes, weird, there's so many toothbrushes. Toothbrushes and flip-flops and thongs. There's so much of that stuff in our oceans, but lots and lots of that small microplastic stuff. And you can see that there, that's on another one of the beaches in Hawaii, as I watched the high tide bring in this soup of plastic. So, for me, plastic in the ocean, microplastic, garbage patches, that's all well and good to talk about it. But the real conversation we need to have is where it's all coming from. Most of it, 80%, is coming from the land. It's coming from the catchment. And you can see that there with this image, which shows you a river in Los Angeles, and all that trash has been swept out in heavy rains. So whenever you have big storms, think about all the plastic being washed into the ocean. Every drain is a portal to the ocean. And you can see that just when you walk around your playground at school, your communities, your streets, all those gutters are taking that plastic into the ocean. So that's me one day being a bit of a weirdo and going, oh, that's a pretty polluted drain. I'll get down on my hands and knees and see how much there is. That's the kind of things that I do. So come and hang out with me and pick up rubbish sometime. It's not the only source of pollution, though. This is one that's very relevant for the demographic here today. Microbeads. These are these tiny pieces of plastic that companies have put into face scrubs, body washes, toothbrushes. So this is people that work in marketing and advertising, recognising there's an opportunity to get people excited about their product by putting plastic in them and marketing all these somewhat dubious claims like exfoliating your skin is going to make you look more beautiful. But what happens is each time you use these products, it goes down the drain and that pollutant gets discharged into the ocean after treatment. So we've got trillions and trillions of these plastic particles going into the ocean just because we washed our face or scrubbed our body or cleaned our teeth. So if that affects you, then go home, have a look on these products, look in the ingredients. If it says polyethylene or polypropylene or some other type of plastic, maybe you want to jump on their Facebook or give them a call, send them an email and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable polluting the ocean with your product, so I'm going to choose another product which doesn't have plastic in it. Your voice is a really important thing on these issues. And we also now know that plastic is getting into the ocean from the clothes that we wear. A lot of our clothing is made from plastic. Nylons and polyesters and all these materials are made of plastic. And when we wash our clothes, those fibres also get discharged into the ocean. So, big problem, which is why we need to do something to combat it. And this is where we're really going to shift the conversation now to the whole notion of reducing the amount of waste that we actually generate. When I look around us, we're consuming this single-use plastic absolutely unabated. And it wasn't always that way. If you go and talk to your grandparents or your parents about what it was like 30, 40, 50 years ago, they weren't using single-use disposable plastic. That's really only a new thing. It all happened really in about the 60s when people started to embrace single-use throwaway living. That's an article there from a magazine in the mid-50s showing how people could say, don't wash your dishes, use our disposable ware, and you can just throw it away when you're done. So it was this whole notion of making life more convenient. And that's where things really, really went wrong. So like I said before, every time you're using this single-use disposable plastic, you have to remember that item is made from oil. It's made from resources that were sucked up from the Earth's core, often in situations that cause a huge amount of environmental damage. This is the Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico, where there was a massive, massive oil leak. People lost their lives, and that's all to sustain our ongoing appetite for fossil fuels. So plastic is oil, so therefore it's a waste of resources, but it's also just a really, really often idiotic abuse of this material. I like this stuff. This is what we call #stupidplastic. This is when you see a use of plastic which really doesn't make sense. It's so extremely excessive. Look at the example on the left. Pre-peeled bananas on a styrofoam tray wrapped in cling film. So that means someone who worked in this supermarket said, you know what would be easier or more convenient? If we peeled the bananas for them and put them on a plastic tray. I mean, has nature given us anything more beautiful than the natural packaging around a banana? And it gets worse. I mean, sushi fish are a big problem. People pre-peeling your garlic. Pre-peeled oranges. Someone has actually done that. Pre-peeled oranges in a plastic tray. And also the avocado that's been conveniently cut in half and wrapped in plastic for you. But look at what's happened there on the left. Someone tweeted this image. 107,000 retweets later, and you can only imagine what happened. The supermarket issued an apology, they withdrew the product and promised never to put an orange on the shelves again that was wrapped in plastic. So only they would use natural packaging. So despite this ludicrous over-packaging of stupid plastic, we have a real voice there to call it out and do something about it. And I hope you guys consider doing the same. So I'm all about really having a big disruption of the way we view waste and the way we consume materials. So the thing that I worship is what we call the waste hierarchy. This is where I get a little bit geeky. Because the waste hierarchy shows us leadership on how we should be consuming and dealing with waste. The first and most preferable thing is just don't create waste in the first place. If you don't create waste, you don't create problems. So how can we as a society reduce the amount of waste that we create? How can we get better at reusing our materials? Reusing the resources so that they don't go to landfill, they don't become pollution, we can repurpose them in our societies. Then you start talking about recycling. We had this notion that when we pop an item in the yellow bin or the recycling bin, we get a clear conscience and we've just been great environmental crusaders. But we don't think about what happens next. That has to get collected by the trucks, transported to the recycling facility, then it gets baled up, and then it gets shipped all around the country or all around the world to be recycled. It's incredibly energy intensive. And in the case of plastic, we're not often making a new plastic bottle out of an old plastic bottle. It actually gets downcycled into a polyester shirt or some filling for a pillow. It doesn't stay in that circular image that we have of recycling. So we've got a lot of work to do. I don't see a future in the next few decades or next few generations where we're just going to continue to have landfills and continue to incinerate and burn our waste. It just won't happen. There's already been lots of leadership shown in some nations where they're saying, you know what, no more new landfills, no more new incinerators. Let's stop sending our waste away. Let's find better ways of keeping the waste in perpetual motion, in cycles. So this is the way I really want you guys to start thinking about our attitudes towards consuming stuff. This poster, I think, really sums it up well. It says, it's pretty amazing that our society has reached a point where the effort necessary to extract oil from the ground, ship it to a refinery, turn it into plastic, shape it appropriately, truck it to a store, buy it and bring it home is considered to be less effort than what it takes to just wash the spoon when you're done with it. Isn't that an interesting way of looking at it? So here we have this thing that is so ubiquitous in our society, a plastic spoon. Sure, it serves a purpose. It allows you to have a little taste of the gelato or eat some yogurt. But then what? This is an item which is made of oil that took millions and millions of years to create, has got so much embedded energy into it, and you've just used it once and then thrown it away. Yet all around us is spoons. You get them in an op shop, you buy a reusable spoon, and you get to use it time and time and time again. So just changing your attitude a little bit towards what it means to have a disposable spoon. So I've changed my behaviour in a big way. I don't use single-use plastic as much as possible. I carry around with me a little kit. So I've got my bottle, I've got my bag, I've got my cutlery, I've even got a reusable straw. These are all things that I bring around with me, and I set myself that challenge. I'm going to try and live my life as zero waste as possible. And you know what? I'm not the only one. People all around the world are doing it too. It led me to start my own business, a little bit of an environmental enterprise I call Rechoosable. That simple gesture of saying, you know what? You have a choice. You can choose to reuse. So I want more people to adopt these very functional items and say, I'm not going to create waste. I'm going to be my own little sustainability champion, my own leader, and bring these items with me everywhere I go. And there's a really big push happening now. I don't know if you've heard about this movement called Plastic Free July. We're in it right now. There's people all around the world who take a month-long challenge of trying to reduce the use of single-use plastic. Tell you what, it's not easy. But that's the whole idea. It's meant to be hard. It gets you guys realising how pervasive plastic is. So say no to a disposable coffee cup. Bring your own reusable cup instead, or just sit in a cafe and drink it out of a ceramic. Say no to straws, say no to plastic bags, and say no to anything else which might be a sort of common single-use plastic item. But not only do we need these personal reactions to this problem, we also need government and corporate leadership. So a big part of my role as being a leader on this issue has been to push the government to make sensible legislative changes. So banning plastic bags. Plastic bags have been banned in hundreds of locations around the world and in 4 states and territories around Australia. We need the whole country to do it. And the other really exciting innovation in legislative change is what they do in South Australia, where every time you return a beverage container, a bottle or a can or a container to be recycled, you get paid money. You get 10 cents every time you return a container in many parts of the world. And we've now been approved that that's coming to New South Wales next July. It's a really, really exciting thing. Yeah. There's so many people out there, people like Ian Kiernan, who started Clean Up Australia. He purchased his first sailing boat from the money that he got from returning cash for cans back in the day. It went away for a while, but it's coming back. You guys start thinking about little entrepreneurial ideas about how you can get money from recycling. But that's a really good example of what we can do when we hold corporate accountability. At the end of the day, people that are creating these beverage containers, these 13 billion items that aren't being recycled, they need to have a responsibility to help make sure they're returned, that they're recycled and don't end up polluting our planet. So that's why container deposit schemes are so good. We also need to ban the microbead. Those companies should not have ever taken that decision to put tiny pieces of plastic in those products. Unfortunately, it's up to us. It's up to us to say, you know what? We're calling you out. You shouldn't have done that. Change your ways. I would like to think about a future when it shouldn't have to be up to us. We need to start thinking about how we can get corporate accountability right across the board. Which really brings me to one of my last points to discuss today. We are seeing a major, major shift in the way the world operates. This approach of a linear economy where we just take resources from the earth to make this stuff that gets sold to you that you use only for a short time and then throw away, that's a very linear approach. It's no wonder we find ourselves in the situation that we're in. What if we could change that linear approach to be that beautiful circular approach? When I look at nature, there's no such thing as waste. A tree grows, a branch falls down. It decomposes to become the nutrients that help to support new life. Nature moves in circles. We too can be influenced and motivated by nature to create a circular economy. Imagine a world where your mobile phone is made of the same ingredients that came from your old phone, so that those precious materials that are having massive impacts on the planet, massive impacts on people to mine those materials, actually come from old goods. This is the circular economy. It's a really exciting space. We'll just kind of move on through that. A great way of looking at the circular economy is how we're reacting to all the biological waste that we create. If you look inside our garbage bins, about half the stuff is made of food waste and organic material. And when we send it to landfill, it rots, it creates methane, which is worse of a pollutant than CO2. It's contributing to the greenhouse effect and contributing to climate change. Yet if we were to compost that material, we would create the fertilisers and nutrients to grow more healthy food. So it doesn't make sense to put it into landfill where it causes problems when we can divert it from landfill to create a positive impact. That's a really common sense approach. And it also opens up the world of using plants or plant-based biological ingredients to make plastic which is biodegradable. So you don't use petroleum, you use plants to make biodegradable plastic which can then be composted. It's also things like soft plastics. If you look into our bins, it's all like, Ziploc bags and bread bags and cling film, all this stuff that is still plastic. It's still an amazing material, but we can't put it into our recycling bin. So what if we could turn it into usable stuff? And that's what these projects like the Red Cycle program allow you to do. Collect soft plastics and turn it into furniture, turn it into building materials. This is all stuff that you can participate in right now to help divert waste from landfill. And there is even technology partners like people like Fairphone that are trying to disrupt the convention that we go and get a new smartphone every 1 to 2 years, and then we throw it away and then we get another one. We throw it away and we get another one. So can we actually look towards a circular economy to create a phone that you can repair, that you can update, or that's made from those recycled ingredients from old phones? And the thing that I really, really find exciting about this is where opportunity is. If you guys are thinking about the future, thinking about where the changing nature of our consumption is going, it's all about the circular economy. The big World Economic Forum in Davos is saying by 2025, it's going to be $1 trillion industry. So this is where opportunity is. It's not going to be in the status quo of the old school linear approach. Everything is going through a disruption, and you as young people, if you're into this stuff, keep on it. Keep going, because this is going to be where the really big opportunities lie for you guys. So in closing, I really would like to see you take some of the content that I've given you today back home, back to your schools, back to your communities. And the simplest thing you can do is just respond to what I have to say today by going out there, and next time you see that bottle cap on the ground, or next time you see that plastic bag blowing across the park, have a think about where it's going next. Doing that take 3 for the sea gesture is the simplest thing you can do, but as you've learnt today, that's just the start of a very, very long journey. So that's my details there. I look forward to seeing some of you in the masterclass, and I look forward to some of your questions coming up. Thank you very much.